Start the show. Good day, everybody, and welcome to Viexpo's webinar, Market Entry USA, Partnering for Success. And this webinar is arranged in cooperation with YBAS and Altix Consulting. Oikein hyvää päivää kaikille ja tervetuloa webinaariin. Webinaarin kieli on englanti, mutta keskustelua voit kuitenkin käydä myös suomeksi. Välkommen också alla till Viexpos webbinarium och webbinariets språk är som sagt engelska men frågor kan ställas även på svenska. My name is Christian Schreier and with us from Viexpo we also have Katja Jankens. Today we are focusing on the US, which is an interesting market for many reasons. So we also have the presidential election around the corner, which might have an impact on business as well, or does it? Maybe Jan and Ann can provide with some inside information for us later on. But anyhow, due to the global pandemic, we are seeing a lot of changes in global trade. The US have always been an important trade partner to Finland, and of course to our exporting companies. And historically as well, a lot of people from Finland has also relocated to the US in the past. We're talking about a huge continent and a huge market, which of course means more than one set of regulation and maybe also more than one business culture. And about today's program and speakers, first out we will have Bachmann, who is a highly experienced when it comes to global business and has worked with successful Finnish mid-cap companies focusing on their market entry in the US. We have Kappel, who is also corporate executive seeking to grow their business across the Atlantic, helping European companies launch and grow in North America. And we also have reserved 10 minutes in the end for our Q&A session. You can also feel free to ask questions during the webinar. You can use the Teams chat. And if we receive a lot of questions, we can also send these questions to the speakers and come back to them later on. And remember, to avoid overload, we ask you to keep your cameras off and microphones muted during the webinar. And a reminder that the webinar is being recorded. But so, to today's program, without further ado, I will give the word now to Jan Bachmann. The floor is yours, Jan.
Thank you, Christian. I will share the screen and turn off my camera so I don't need to worry what I look like. So. All right. Thank you very much. No, the screen doesn't change. I'll try again. Interesting, we rehearsed it before the webinar and now it doesn't change. All right. Good afternoon.
Now it's working. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Good afternoon. My name is Jan Bachmann. It's great to have so many people joining the webinar. And thank you, Viexpo, for all the arrangement and organization of this, and thank you Altix Consulting for partnering with us on this exciting journey. I have gained my experience doing business in Asia, Singapore, China, South Korea, and in Europe and in the United States, mainly within sales, delivery, project management. That's gained through my earlier career at Wärtsilä. Further, I was leading Fluid Bag Limited, a packaging company from Pietarsaari, and its global sales for more than 11 years. My interest in business has also led me to become a shareholder and investor in a number of unlisted companies. That's why I have a good understanding of the different needs at the different stages in companies. And I'm a founding partner of YBAS Oy. This story I'm about to tell is about the establishment of Fluid Bag LLC, which is a US subsidiary of Fluid Bag Limited in Pietarsaari. At the time I was a managing director and the CEO of the company. And I'm telling this story based on my personal experience. As a background, we were expected to grow the company profitably. Who isn't? The company was operating in a niche market, and we had a fairly good market coverage in Europe. And to grow, we needed to look beyond Europe. We also had made our first steps in Asia through our subsidiary in Chonburi, Thailand, and a representative office in Singapore, which we unfortunately had to close later. However, we felt that the Asian market was not really ready for our product in a large scale. And over the years, I had developed the opinion that for a person with Nordic values, it is easier to do business in the US than even in some parts of Europe. I can say that I've lived a few years in Italy, lived and worked there, so there's a cultural difference. And this includes, other than culture, also language and the way of communications. And the countries, US and Nordics, have Christian values. They are built on Christian values, and that means that we have the same moral rule book, basically. Based on this, I decided to drive the growth towards the United States. We already had a base annual revenue of around $1 million, so we would have cash flow from the start. We had a cooperation with a company in Lansing, Michigan, which provided warehousing and other logistical service functions. However, having the logistics in place meant that we rather needed to strengthen our sales and marketing to reach new customers. To get started, market studies were conducted through Business Finland, the Finnish government-sponsored agency. It was called FinPro at the time. We had excellent experiences from FinPro, who earlier conducted a partner search program in Australia and a study of the mining industry in Southeast Asia. We had also used FinPro in Thailand and in Singapore with great experience. As USA is a large country, it was more challenging. It seemed that FinPro did operate in connection to the Finnish embassies and consulates mostly. The caveat to that is that the agencies tend to focus on large cities, and they are in large cities, the metros. This is exactly what was recommended. We were dealing in the oil industry, go to Texas. We also had something in the cosmetics industry, so go to New York and or Los Angeles, etc. This was not exactly what we had in mind. We were looking for one location which needed to be central to reach as many potential customers as possible easily. In addition, we conducted 2 separate market studies on specific industries to verify our belief of the market potential and the market size in those industries. Further, we studied the suitability and compatibility of our products on the US market. Think about liters versus gallons, millimeters versus inches, square meters versus square feet. If a European standard of a container is 1,000 liter, what's the standard size used in the States? It's not 264.172 gallons, at least. Further, we studied the legal requirements of our products. What are the industry-specific requirements, like from Food and Drug Administration, FDA, or the Department of Transportation, etc. Adapt to the market. Don't expect the US client to change. Only when we were sure that we had what it takes, we proceeded. And in the fall of 2014, one member of the Fluidback board joined a conference in Helsinki. At the conference, Ann Kappel was introduced to our colleague, and after some discussion, the board decided to contact Ann directly, which resulted in the board and I traveling to Cincinnati in early January 2015. 3 full days were conducted, meeting many people in the local network. We met a lawyer, an accountant and tax advisor, a recruiter. We visited a bank. We were shown possible locations to set up, and best of customers for Fluidbag, all at the first visit. One of the first visits was to state and regional agencies and organizations. In the picture, the outer circle shows a 600 miles radius around Cincinnati in this case. That's 1,000 kilometers roughly. With more than half of the economy in the circle. Bullseye, exactly what we were thinking of. The picture on this page created a lot of positive discussion as it did fit our plans perfectly. And I claim to say that this was also the decision point to go there. After the visit, and was very helpful with all our questions and studies which we conducted. Getting connected to the business network in Cincinnati seemed almost too good to be true. It seemed too easy. So our board got suspicious. Are we stepping into a trap? So we paused the project, which was very frustrating to me personally. However, in June 2015, Ann Kappel and her team came to Finland on a counter visit. During the visit, we registered the US company, created a bank account in US, set up Fluidbag LLC from Pietarsaari. After registration, we started the recruitment process to hire a sales and marketing manager. Further, we rented and set up an office in Blue Ash, which is a county near Cincinnati, Ohio. The opening date was September 1st, 2015. Since that, the sales has tripled within 4 years and still going. And over to you then. Your mic is off.
There we go, my microphone is on. Is my screen on?
Yes.
Full screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to turn off my camera now and let's get started. So thank you and good afternoon to all of you. As I was briefly introduced, my name is Ann Kappel. Oh, wait a second here. Hold on 1 second. Okay, my name is Ann Kappel, and I am delighted to join you today from actually Cincinnati in the United States. In a way of introduction, I am originally from Europe, and to be specific, I was born and raised in France, and I came to the US during my university studies. And in the 30 plus years that I have lived in the US, I have always worked with international companies. I was a co-founder of the first European American Chamber of Commerce in the US, which was established in Cincinnati, and I was its executive directors for nearly 10 years. And during that time, I helped many European companies enter and launch in the US, guiding them and helping them find the resources that they needed to successfully grow and compete in this ultra competitive market, and Fluidbag was a wonderful success story. During this time, I had the great pleasure of visiting Finland several times, meeting a lot of companies in Helsinki, in Tampere, in Pietarsaari. And again, that's where I met Jan Bachmann and Fluidbag and had the pleasure to support their development. For the past 20 years, I also served as honorary consul of France, helping French citizens as well as French companies establish in the US. In 2000, I co-founded Altix, a boutique consulting firm specializing in helping industrial mid-cap companies compete and grow on a global scale. So today, it is a great pleasure to partner with Viexpo in a joint YBAS Altix webinar, Market Entry USA, Partnering for Success for Nordic Companies. So let's get started. Looking at the US from Europe, we first see one country. But yet, as was just shared a couple of minutes ago, we all understand that it is a very large country. In fact, it's the third largest country in the world behind China and Russia. To put things in perspective, the map here shows Finland, which is approximately the size of the state of Minnesota and shown in red on the US map, and the country of Sweden, which is about the size of the state of California in green in the map. So you may ask, how is this relevant to your companies looking to grow in the US? Well, it's important to realize that size really matters. When you look at the size of the US, it's almost the same size as the entire continent of Europe. It spans over 4 time zones, which really has a big impact on how effectively you can direct your US business from Finland and Sweden. For example, to connect during business hours on the East Coast of the United States, when it's 8 a.m., it is already 3 p.m. in Finland and 2 p.m. in Sweden. This means that you only have about 3 or 4 hours a day to connect during normal business hour. Now, if you go on the West Coast, on the Pacific time zone, 8 a.m. is already 6 p.m. in Finland and 5 p.m. in Sweden, which you can imagine make things very challenging to stay connected. So when preparing for your market entry and development in the US, we need to fully appreciate the opportunities, but also the challenges that such a large market offers, and then of course develop an appropriate approach. Now, as the world's largest economy, worth $20 trillion, or about a quarter of the global economy, the US is indeed a very attractive market for companies looking to grow and expand internationally. You have 328 million consumers with a purchasing power of about $65,000 annually per capita, and that's quite attractive. But here again, it's very important to note the significant difference in per capita income among the US states. For example, the southern state of Mississippi has a very significantly lower per capita income than, let's say, the Midwest industrial state of Ohio, and even much lower than on the East Coast, like Washington, D.C. or Philadelphia, for example. So taking the time to understand the US economy will help understand and prioritize which states are more attractive for your business. As a state's economies and wealth will have an impact on the cost of doing business, like labor costs for either your US teams or your US production. It will also impact the cost of services. For example, what do you pay for legal services, for tax advisors, for business advisors? For example, a lawyer in New York City is twice as expensive as a lawyer in Cincinnati, Ohio. The cost of living will have a huge impact as well if you decide to send expatriates from Finland, from your home company, to work in the US. Now, in addition to the cost of doing business, access is also a very key consideration. It's important to understand where your customers are, your suppliers, where the resources you need are located, and how to reach them efficiently. And just much like in Finland or Sweden, the US population is not distributed evenly around the country. Some parts of the countries are quite isolated. So knowing where the population clusters are, how this will evolve over time, will also help you identify which location makes the most for your business. Also, importantly, looking at the industry clusters. And here I also have the map that Jan showed that was so instrumental in selecting the location for Fluid Bag in the United States. And industry clusters mean significant access to the supportive ecosystem, again, such as access to your customers, suppliers, the qualified labor for your industry, the qualified services, but also the qualified transportations. So as an industrial company, Fluid Bag realized that it's needed to be in the industrial basin of the Midwest of America. And they chose to establish their US subsidiary in the Midwest, and specifically in Cincinnati, Ohio. But for example, if you were a pharmaceutical company, would that make sense? Looking at the clusters, it would probably make more sense for you to be in the northeast part of the United States, like the states of Pennsylvania or the state of New Jersey. So ultimately, it's very important to conduct research to help support the decision of where to launch your business. You know, surprisingly, many companies, many business owners will select a solution because they're familiar with it, they've heard of it. Maybe they have visited it in vacation. Maybe this is where they would feel they would enjoy living, or they would enjoy visiting when they come and do business in the US. And in fact, those locations sometimes are extremely detrimental to the. Now shifting to the American way of doing business. Are you ready to compete in one of the most competitive markets in the world? So the Americans have the reputation of being approachable, friendly, highly communicative, and rather informal. And they speak one common language from coast to coast. But this perceived ease of doing business can be deceptive. We said again many times, the US market is highly competitive, and doing business in the US means competing head to head with the best companies in the world, whether they are American-based companies or foreign-owned companies. So a couple of things to know. One particularity of the US business culture is that it favors short-term ROIs, return on investments, much more acquisition-oriented in order to speed up the outcome. Americans are risk takers. If it works, they advance with confidence. They really do not seek perfection. And by their can-do attitude, their customer-focused attitude, and they expect that that will take them to the finish line. Many European technology companies, especially Germans, really struggle with this, as they often feel that they have to have the best product on the market, which often takes longer to develop and comes at a higher price. And the US customer does not see value in perfection, especially if it slows down the process and is more expensive. Perhaps one of the most important aspects to understand in the US culture is really to appreciate how much the US customer values customer service. Service is where often deals are made and deals are lost. Service means the customer is your priority 100%, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of the year. The US customer does not understand vacation weeks, does not understand time zones that may delay communication or access, nor do they have the patience for bureaucratic protocols that can complicate and slow down the business outcome. If you want to win a US customer, you need to meet their customer service expectations. And business in the US is also highly networked. People invest a lot of time and effort developing and leveraging their business network. Americans are very open to network, to accept invitations to connect and to even learn about your company. However, you only have just a few minutes or a few words to catch their attention before they close the window of opportunity if they haven't heard what they wanted to hear in the first few minutes. Now, touching very briefly on legal and tax. It's important to know that the US has legal and tax regulations both at the federal level and at the state level. And this impacts where you locate and how you service your customers in different states. That will require that you understand the differences between the states, and you will need to have the support of qualified legal and tax advisors to make those informed decisions, to minimize the potential legal and tax liability. As a company, you will need to understand that you will need to pay taxes in where you sell your product, where you have customers. And that can become very, very difficult to manage if you did not select the right location nor have the support of the right advisors. So the key to a successful US market entry is really to understand the US market and to localize your approach. We already looked at the key consideration in selecting a location, such as cost of doing business, access to customers, suppliers, qualified resources, and for ease of communication with headquarters. But it's also essential to understand the market for your products or your services. Is your product or service adapted to the US market? Do you have all the features and the features you've developed for your own market? Are they relevant to the US market? You may remember the failure of the French car manufacturers Renault, and that's not a small company, that's a very large French car manufacturers. In their attempt to enter the US market, they chose to enter the US market with a small, what's called Renault 5 or Renault Le Car in the US. The customer did not fit in the car that was made for French people who are much smaller. The US drivers also drive about double the mileage per year as a French driver. So they prefer much larger and much stronger cars. And the important consideration for low gas mileage that in the French environment was completely irrelevant in the US, where the price of gas is significantly lower than in France. So all in all, Renault's attempt in the US to come in with a small car was a complete failure, as the company did not understand the market. Other consideration is what will be the price you need to charge, considering the additional cost incurred from exporting to the US or setting up your US operations. And that, can you be competitive considering those added costs? How will you sell to the US customer? Is your marketing, such as your website, your marketing brochures, is it adapted to the US customer? Very interestingly, in Europe, we spend a lot of time on speaking about the technology part of product, or speaking about how is 5 generations, and that's why people should trust us. That is not relevant in the US. So understanding what information will catch the attention is important. Will you hire a US sales force? The right salespeople with the right compensation model will be self-motivated, they will work well independently, and they will help you build a very powerful US sales organization. You can count on that from an American US sales team. However, the salaries and the compensation packages in the US will be a sticker shock to Europeans. So here again, understanding the cultural differences will be essential to learn how to manage effectively a US sales force, as well as to avoid potentially expensive labor issues when hiring and when managing a US team. So doing business in the US will require investing in resources to learn, to plan, to launch, and to compete effectively. And what we know is up to 70% of businesses fail when they enter the US market, often due to insufficient planning, ineffective brand communication, legal misstep, or misunderstanding of the US culture. So ask yourself, are you positioned to succeed in the US market? And who are your partners? So as the world's largest economy with the world's highest GDP per capita, the US market remains one of the most attractive in the world, and yet one of the most competitive as well. So international small and medium companies leverage the knowledge, the networks, the best practices of experienced advisors on both sides of the Atlantic to navigate the complexity of international expansion to the US. So YBAS and Altix together joined to help support Nordic companies seamlessly, helping business leaders and their international team develop their US market entry strategy with risk assessments, strategic options and financial planning, then planning the sales and business development through market research, strategic marketing and communications, and sales and distribution models. And then when ready, help establish a sales office or a distribution center or productions. So now, welcome back Jan Bachmann to conclude and to open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll need to check my slide again. I have a concluding slide here, which should show now. No, it doesn't. Technical issues. Now. Well, the last slide here. Let's go on a similar journey. We have been there, we have done that, we gained the experience. The journey we made with Fluidbag was great and exciting. And we learned a lot. As everything was not a walk in the park, we actually faced many of the things Anne had in her presentation. We made it. And let's go on a similar journey with your company. We can walk with you each step, all the way. Mennään Amerikkaan, tulkaa mukaan. Questions, or Christian, you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Jan and Anne. We have also great presentations. First of all, thank you for this. We have also received some questions in advance that we'll go into as well. And to the audience once more, feel free to ask questions through the chat or raise your hand if you wish. Again, going back to that, we have a lot of cultural differences between these continents for sure, and also to Anne, you have helped a lot of European companies to the US in the past. Do you feel that there's a difference in how European companies and Finnish companies are perceived when coming? Do you think there's a plus side in being a Finnish company or coming from Finland, or do you see any differences there?
No, the US customer is very pragmatic. If you have the right product and you have it at the right price and you can deliver on your promise, you have a chance like anybody else. You just have to know exactly how the customers wants to work. You have to compete. And you have to deliver. There's really no discrimination. Of course, you can hear a lot about made in America. So yes, in the last few years, that consideration for made in America I think it's very prevalent in some particular industries. And so for that, you may be completely shut out for some particular industries, but I would say there's really no discrimination. If you have the product they need, right price, and they believe in your promise, you stand a very strong chance. What would you say, Jan?
Yeah, I agree, and it's remarkable how well you are received. You come but you are expected to add value. You can't come there and waste everyone's time. You need to have something to offer. But people will listen. It's easy also when you have something to offer. You can it goes quite fast. You don't need to wait and moan and wait for weeks like many times in Europe. There is a protocol you need to do in Europe, but that's not the case in America. If you have something to offer, it goes relatively fast.
If I may add to what Jan just said, when Jan mentions the protocol, that's a very, very big difference between the US and Europe. There's a protocol, there is a hierarchy. You need to find how you're going to be introduced and how eventually it goes up in the direction or side in the direction, but it has to take some time. You cannot miss a spot in the hierarchy of things. As I mentioned in my presentation, in the United States, it's all about network. You can go straight to the president and CEO of a company as a salesperson. You just need to, again, prepare very well your entrance, have the way that catches the attention, and sometimes you might do this on LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, you have 300 characters. That's what you have. If you want to try to reach somebody who does not know you, but there's nothing holding you back. The American may decide to ignore you, that's fine. But if you got their attention, you better be ready because they're listening. And the next have been prepared well before so that you can come back. And then from there, you can get deeper. So you don't have to really feel that there is a certain hierarchy, that maybe you're a small company, you're from far away, maybe you're not the president of the CEO company, so you cannot reach to that level in the United States. No, you don't have at all that same consideration as in Europe. But you have to be confident, you have to be bold, and you have to deliver on whatever it is you say that you're coming up next.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, that for sure is a big difference. In a lot of business culture, it works that way, that it will have to be CEO to CEO, salesperson to salesperson, and so on. And glad to know is that the fact here. And do I also understand you correctly that you will also be told quite quickly if they do not see a potential in further cooperation? Absolutely.
Everything happens fast. Like I shared, it's all about return on investment and return very, very quickly. The American economy is kind of run by financial people. A lot of presidents, CEOs of companies in America come more than in Europe from the financial background. Everything is on a 3 months window. It's not on the 5-year or 10-year plan. Everything is on a 3 months window. So it's the same. They will make a very quick opinion, quick decision. Once they put you aside, it's very hard to come back and get their attention.
Okay, very good, and that's actually quite a good bridge then also to the next question, because being a former entrepreneur myself, I value also the fact that you can get fast response from a potential client or buyer or business partner. So we had a question about always important when you plan for a new market entry. Would you say when a company should go into this new market, time-wise, budget-wise, usually talk about exporting being a long journey? You might not see revenue or you might not see growth even in 3 to 5 years time and so on. Any thoughts on this? Do you think it's will you see faster results, or will you get the idea of where things are going faster entering the US market?
Jan, do you want to speak for
I can. Confirming what Anne said earlier, I think it's a relevant response to this question as well. I mean, you get the response faster, and you don't moan on for 6 months with, will it be a deal or will it not? I mean, you know pretty quickly that you don't have anything to offer here, and then move on to the next one. But on the other hand, the purchase decision is a purchase decision, so the business will quite quickly go on. Okay, depends on the product. If you are selling something which needs to be constructed, etc. So it's all relevant. But the decision making is fast. I would say that the getting growth is faster in America than Europe, in many places in Europe.
So taking this answer and stepping back even further back in the process, it really is all about preparation. I think, again, we tend to think of America of, there's the cowboy attitude. Let's go and we'll find things. And so that's why, it's very deceptive, the perception of what we know of America and then indeed what it is. It is a very sophisticated market. It is also an expensive market. It's not a low-cost market at all levels, right? So you'll pay for resources at a high price. So preparing in advance your approach. First of all, knowing, do you even have the product or the service that match the customer? So that's very basic. Again, another very, very silly example, but if you make cars in the US and you want to sell them in the UK, you better know that the steering wheel is on the other side. Otherwise, you don't really stand a chance. I mean, that's just, but that goes for all the way into the details. So first of all, realizing, do you have a product that fits? And then after that, really understanding what are the industries. Very often your product might fit in multiple industries, prioritizing those industries, identifying whether some of those industries might be taking much longer time for the buying process. They might be more attractive. You might have some industry that are much shorter time for the buying process, even though they might be smaller potential. But you got to know how do you map it out? Because you're right. If you aim for something that is the best potential, but you don't have the resources to get to the finish line, you will stop before you even arrive. In the meantime, you have depleted very significant resources that your company in the headquarters needs for other markets. So understanding really what you're dealing with and making the right decision and prioritizing, and also before trying to sell something to the US, already identifying once again, where are the networks? Where are the pockets? How is it that if I make one approach, I don't reach one customer, but I could reach 50 customers, because that approach is kind of more of a multiplier effect. And how do I know about this? Do I do it from Finland on LinkedIn? Or are there some particular people that have those, whether it's people that are advising you, whether there are the right distributors that you will then find out and you will identify, or however that is. But that preparation work allows you to manage your resources, map it out, create your roadmap. And in the end, what do you have? Once you get started, you have a recipe and you implement. You don't improvise. In the meantime, keeping some agility, so that indeed what you're learning in the process, you can adapt where it's needed, but you're not just making it up as you go. And that will give the company the confidence, not only that you can reach success, but also the confidence that the resources that you're investing are there for return on investment on a certain scale and in a certain timing, and you're not going to run out of runway.
Yeah, and on that token, if your offering is not thought through, you're not ready, it will be picked apart. They will go through the customers will go through the offering in detail, and it's not that they shoot from the hip, but its decision is fast. That's the
Very good, thanks. Great answers. We had a question in the chat, and also we had a question that I will ask also first. It's a bit of a technical issue when it comes to logistics and freight issues. because the customer usually wants to know the total price of products delivered basically to their doorstep. And there might be problems with logistic companies not usually giving final prices, and there might be some added costs. And even though you're able to give quite exact information about your shipment. So any thoughts or advice on this?
I can pick up on that because that was an issue with us at the time. It's so that, as Anne mentioned, the tax is, there's a federal tax, there's a state tax, but there's also a county tax. So basically your sales tax is based on the postal code, or what is it called, this zip code. And that's there are tools for this to know what the tax will be. Then the other issue is that the freight cost, they are the freight competed in, you can, the truck sizes are different. So it's a good thing would be to have a partner that ships it locally. If you have a warehouse and so on, but I don't have a really good answer at the moment, but we can look into this. But that's why we had a partner in Lansing, Michigan, who actually shipped and took care of this and could get the quotes, and they had the tools for the zip code based on what taxes will be included here, and that's the only suggestion I have. And do you have something to add to that?
Again, it really is about aligning, knowing in advance by aligning that with the people that will help you, first of all, create that understanding of are you going to be selling to all 50 states or certain concentrations, and then finding the partners on the ground that will support you, because it is technical, and you cannot deal with that from Europe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, local partners, I'm sure, is needed here. And I guess also when discussing these things with a potential customer, I guess these are things that you also can very freely discuss, that this is something we have to look into and come back to at a later time to get an exact quotation. Yeah, I mean, you better know ahead of time how you compare to others or what it is, because again, the customer doesn't really care about your problems. That's not his problem. He can buy local and he doesn't have to deal with that. So either your product is so unique that the customer cannot find it anywhere else, and that conversation maybe will not derail your opportunity, or there's a lot of other competition out there and the customer will get very bored very fast and will not want to spend his or her time on this topic if your competitors don't have, it doesn't have to deal with the issues from your competitors. Yeah, so again, prepare very well for every question.
Yes, and there are third-party logistic companies having that service exactly for this, because this is an issue in the whole United States.
Okay, very good, thank you. We also have a question in the chat from Henry. The question is, how do you see companies selling fast-moving products online to the US market? What are the main considerations when entering to the market? What do you mean? Can you be more specific on fast-moving product? Probably we can call this consumer goods, consumer products. Yeah. So in this case, if you're in that situation, you probably need to, in your plan, already imagine, how do I establish some kind of a distribution facility center, or have a third-party person that can handle that if you don't want to go in and set it up yourself, so that indeed you ship containers, and when an order is placed, it comes directly from a US address to a US address, and you're able to deliver on the promise of an expectation of a fast-paced product and expectation delivery. So that's something that is very different than when you order
maybe some equipment for which people know it's going to be weeks or months before, and for which the shipping part is not the main delay. It's also the customization of the equipment or the building to specification of the equipment, and then the shipping part is it's just part of the whole thing. But on fast-moving product, if that's the case, very quickly you need to imagine how that doesn't become a hurdle. And so establishing a base in the US where you've got an inventory of product.
And not, I see in the chat here it means electronics, but selling packaging, there's nobody buying packaging waiting for 6 weeks delivery. So that's why we had a warehouse there, because when you buy, that's when you need the product. It's not in 6 weeks normally. So we had a distribution center there.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks, Henry, for clarifying. We hosted a webinar about Amazon also and e-commerce earlier, and it's unbelievable how fast the logistics works nowadays. So for sure this is an important issue as well. So thank you for that. Then also we had a question about we get fast response from the customers, and if we do enter an agreement, there are also differences in business cultures around the world here. In some parts of the world, even though you have an agreement, you can always negotiate again. How do you feel this is holding up in the US? Do we honor contracts and go back and look at contracts, or do we have an ongoing discussion and honor the relationship of the business?
I'll answer at the high level, and it then be important to have Jan's experience as well. But typically, once you have an agreement, you stick to the agreement and you don't renegotiate in the middle of it, especially if you do not give any reasons for renegotiations. If nobody is missing anything, things are happening as planned, then the contract stands. Now, if you start to be not able to deliver on time, you start to have some issues, and of course the customer might say, well, this is not what we had agreed on, and maybe we need to renegotiate. But if you don't give the customers any reasons for that, there is a good stability on what an agreed agreement means for both sides. So Jan, maybe from your experience?
No, I agree to that, and have everything in writing. You can deal with a handshake, but you need to confirm it in writing, and that's the important thing. I mean, have everything written down.
Okay, very good. Good discussion around these questionnaires, and that's all that we had. Also, we had some questions beforehand. We have handled that now. I see there are no new questions in the chat at the moment. So we seem to be quite on time also for this. Do you have any final words that you want to share, Anne or Jan?
So from my end, I think, again, even though we are in a world like no other time, there's business is still going on. The United States is still open for business. The United States is customer driven. Yes, there are regulations. Yes, you have some political movements and you have all of that, but ultimately the customer is king. The customer decides what they're looking for. If you believe you have the product or the service that the American customer needs and wants, and you do the proper preparation and allocation of resources that matches the size of your company, and then you also leverage all the resources, networks, and partners that make sense for you, then there's no reason why you cannot get a piece of that market that is very attractive. And from my part, I would love to for us to continue to help Finnish and Swedish companies to be successful. I've had amazing experiences in the past. I've enjoyed very much working with the Finnish companies that I've worked with and the Finnish people that I've worked with. And I'm excited that we are now together with YBAS, and again, being feet on the ground on both sides of the Atlantic for seamless support, especially when we're talking about the smaller, medium-sized companies that really need to watch their resources very, very carefully and have resources that are adapted to their needs, to their speed, etc. So that's it for me. So I hope we get to speak again. Thank you so much, Christian from Viexpo, and to all the audience out there. Very much looking forward to hearing from you. And Jan and YBAS, perhaps you can also have the concluding words.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a good discussion, and thank you for the audience, and thanks Christian and Viexpo for organizing and for all the support you have had for us so far. Maybe I didn't follow my script. Maybe you could put up the slide with the contact details of both companies as well, because I jumped over that in my eagerness to get to the questions. So people get our email address.
Can you see it?
Yes,
Yes,
perfect. Thank you, Anne.
And yeah, so we, as Anne said, we aim to work in a seamless manner, so we can be the first point of contact in on this side of the pond, and Anne is on the other side with her team. So especially now when the travel restrictions are here, we can work seamlessly together like this.
Very good. Thank you so much, Jan, and thank you, Anne, for the wonderful discussions, great presentations, and yeah, to the audience as well. Thank you also for the question. Thanks everybody for attending, and please, you can contact the speakers of today. You can also contact us if there are any questions. We can come back to later on. And I do think feels great that we have also now local expertise on site that we can work with. We have seen, especially during this pandemic, that the companies that have had already local resources that they can work with in different markets has managed quite a lot better now. So I think it will be just as important as going forward. Also a reminder we'll send you all a feedback link after this webinar. So we hope they can take 2 minutes of your time to fill that in and give us ideas and feedback, because of course that's really important to us, and we'll for sure continue with these webinars. So if you have any ideas for following webinars as well, please let us know. So thank you once again for great discussions, and look forward to working with you soon. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Kiitos, tack.
Very good. Thank you.
Kiitos.